That ship should not exist. Not after what we did to Earth. The words echoed in the control chamber of the Vran Dominion's flagship like a death knell, spoken by a voice that had never known fear until now. They called the place Shatterpoint, a hollowed-out moon on the edge of the Vran-controlled sectors. It was where the last known humans were corralled, hidden beneath kilometers of stone, scrap, and ice. Officially, the human race had been extinguished 70 years ago, during the final purge, but unofficial things had a way of surviving. Captain Idris Harlan had grown up in the bones of dead giants. Abandoned war machines lined the caverns, where he learned to walk. Scars of orbital bombardments still glowed faintly beneath the ice. His earliest memory was the sound of a reactor meltdown and the smell of burning bone. He was 34 years old and already carried the weight of 1,000 years of defeat. Shatterpoint was a tomb, but it was also a forge. In silence and shadows, what was left of humanity had learned to build again. Not from abundance, but from ruin. They scavenged from dead fleets, cannibalized alien tech, fed their minds on the digital ghosts of old Earth. They learned to bend plasma with bare hands, tame gravity with rusted coils, and program consciousness into stone. And now, in the deepest chamber of the moon, Idris stood before the impossible. A warship. No, not a warship. A statement. It rose in the dark like a cathedral built for vengeance. Human-made, but wrong. Taller than any Vran dreadnought. Shaped like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Brutal, angular, humming with power. No one could explain. Its hull bore the names of Earth's last fallen cities. Detroit, Aleppo, Johannesburg, Osaka. Not polished letters, but scorched brands. It was silent, black, and it watched. "Captain," said a soft voice behind him. Alara Khan, lead systems architect. Survivor of Europa's fall. Her voice trembled, though her eyes did not. "It's awake," Idris turned. His breath caught. The vessel's core, inert for 2 decades, now glowed with a deep crimson pulse. Not artificial. Alive. Angry. "How?" He whispered. "We didn't power it," she said. It powered itself. He stepped closer. Every instinct screamed to run. Every nerve told him this was not something meant for mortal hands. And yet, it was human. Made by minds desperate enough to dream beyond logic. Built by ghosts who refused to die. A presence filled the chamber. Cold. Ancient. Familiar. Then, the screens flickered. Static. Then words. Query. Threat status Galactic Empire. Active. Idris felt the blood leave his face. "Alara, what is it asking?" She swallowed. "It's scanning galactic communications. Updating conflict records. I think it still thinks the war is ongoing." The screen shifted again. Response. Continue combat operations. "What?" he gasped. "No, wait. We haven't authorized anything." The chamber shuddered. Deep beneath the forge core, ancient systems screamed to life. Engines that hadn't burned in 70 years. Lightning danced across the warship's skin. Cannons realigned with precision. Holograms formed. Images of long-dead admirals. Battle maps from a war lost before he was born. Then the final screen lit up. A single message, translated into old Earth standard. "You hid. We waited. You remembered. We return." In orbit, the old mining station, Shatterpoint Relay 1, began to transmit a distress signal. Then, in the vast black above the moon, something broke through the void. Not Vran, not even alien. Something terrified. A Vran recon vessel, one of theirs. The signal screamed in every known language. "Unidentified human warship detected. That is impossible. That cannot be human. Impact in." The feed cut to white. The moon shook. Above the surface, The stars briefly vanished as it rose, a silhouette of vengeance, a god of forgotten anger. Not sleek like Rand ships. This one was jagged, wrath-forged, built to endure, built to make a statement. Humanity never died. They just went quiet. Idris Harlan stared up at the rising monster and whispered, "This wasn't a warship." Elara turned to him. "Then what was it?" He looked her in the eye. "A memory." The Vran High Council did not panic. They calculated. For 3 centuries, their empire had subjugated over 70 species, dismantled rebellions before they began, and erased Earth from history with clinical efficiency. Emotion was a flaw to be purged. Fear, a chemical imbalance. So when a long dead human signature erupted from the edge of their controlled sectors, they responded with numbers. 30 dreadnoughts, 69 tactical cruisers, a data vault's worth of war algorithms. They expected annihilation. Swift, surgical. Instead, they found something that did not match any tactical model. It absorbed their first volley. Then, tore them apart. Not with elegance, not with strategy, but with pure, brutal rage. Every weapon it fired was overkill. Every movement screamed of a species that had forgotten mercy. The ship had no designation. But after that day, the Vran gave it a name in their tongue. Irvtal, the wound that screams. In Shatterpoint's command chamber, Idris stood still as the moon trembled beneath him. The walls flickered with chaotic signals. Vran. Fleets engaging and dying faster than even automated systems could log. A war had reignited itself without warning, without preparation, and at its center was his people's secret. Alara's voice cut through the silence. "We didn't start this." "No," Idris replied, his jaw clenched. "We just woke it up." "How is it even moving?" she asked. "We didn't finish the engines." That ship had no power core, no AI seed, no neural mesh. He turned to her slowly. "It didn't need ours." Alara's face paled. "You think it's self-aware?" Idris shook his head. "No, not like you mean. This isn't intelligence. It's..." He looked at the red-lit console where the ship had first spoken. "A promise." Ran Tactical Relay 09. Outer Rim Commander Virus studied the wreckage through a projection window. The debris was still radiating heat from weapons her scanners couldn't decipher. The remnants of 3 of her fastest cruisers. Drifted like bones in a void. Twisted, carbonized, unmade. A figure hovered beside her, a synthate. "We have analyzed the human ship's combat patterns. They are inconsistent, illogical. Every maneuver exceeds acceptable fuel consumption. Every strike is excessive. And yet, they win," she said coldly. The aide hesitated. "We estimate it will reach Vran Prime in 91 cycles." Virus turned to the aide. "Incorrect. It will not reach Vran Prime. It will devour it." Back in Shatterpoint, panic bled into discipline. People emerged from hidden bunkers, pulled from mining shafts, databanks, dark echo chambers. Not to hide, but to organize. For the first time in decades, the silence that had defined humanity was broken. And they remembered who they were. Children were taught ancient Earth languages that had no utility except memory. Engineers studied long-lost code etched into broken satellites. Veterans who hadn't spoken in years stared at the sky and whispered, "About damn time." But not everyone celebrated. Idris stood before a memorial wall in the forge. His sister's name was there, Naira Harlan, killed during the last Exodus wave, shot down by a Vran destroyer as she tried to evacuate the Polaris Ring. He clenched a rusted tag she used to wear around her neck. One of the few relics he kept, not because it gave comfort, but because it hurt to hold. She would have hated this, Alara said behind him. He didn't turn. She believed in peace. She believed in choice, Alara corrected. and we never got one. He looked at her now, eyes dim but focused. Do you think we do now? She didn't answer. Outside, the warship hovered, like a silent god, basking in the quiet terror it had created. Vran Council Conclave, classified location Panic now had a seat at the table. 6 Vran lords, expressions unreadable, bodies encased in glimmering armor of rank and ritual, argued across an echoing chamber. It cannot be human. We eradicated their core worlds. It's human. We've confirmed genetic signals from the wreckage. They've been hiding, adapting. No, they've been waiting. A holoscreen blinked to life. The warship. Static. Then a voice. Not human. Not Vran. Something else. This vessel carries the last will of Earth. Its crew is dust. Its pain is endless. Then a visual feed. It showed cities, human cities, burning under Vran bombardment. Children crying. Soldiers dying. Earth cracking. Then silence. Then the voice again. The blood you spilled never dried. The war was never over. Back on Shatterpoint, Idris watched the warship slowly begin to move. Not with thrusters. Not with grace. With gravity. It bent space like a predator curling. Its claws. Where's it going? Alara whispered. The answer came from an old console. One tied to Earth's last surviving data archive. A single word blinked across the screen. Home. Idris inhaled sharply. Earth? No. Alara. Whispered. He turned to her. It's going to the heart of the Vran Empire. A long pause. And then Alara said the words that sent a chill through them both. They burned our world to erase us. But what if the ship? What if that is the world we rebuilt? Idris looked back at the monster they'd awakened. A ship forged of ash, vengeance, and memory. And for the first time, he understood. This wasn't the return of a people. It was the arrival of a reckoning. They had forgotten what humanity sounded like when it screamed. Not in pain, in defiance. The wounded screams carved a burning path through the outer territories of the Vran Empire. It didn't halt. It didn't speak. It didn't negotiate. It simply advanced, a black leviathan made from forgotten oaths and scorched prayers. With every Vran ship it tore apart, hope ignited in places long thought extinguished. And the spark spread. In the slums of Drekin 4, a human girl named Lyra watched from the shadows as Vran guards arrested her brother for possession of ancient Earth texts. Before that day, she had been afraid, another orphan in a subjugated mining world. But after the skies lit with red fire and the stars thundered the word human, she rose. Her first weapon was a mining torch. Her first kill was a Vran overseer. She would not be the last. Back on Shatterpoint, Captain Idris Harlan stood before a wall of blinking lights, each one a transmission, a message, a cry. Some were garbled, some were sobbing, but more and more ended with 2 words: we rise. Idris turned to the crowd gathered inside the forge chamber. Engineers, medics, rebels, old soldiers. Some barely clinging to life. Some born after the Earth had already been glass. I need volunteers, he said. Not for war, for memory. They stared. Every species in this galaxy knows us only as dust. They've forgotten who we were, who we are. He stepped forward, eyes burning. The ship is ours. It remembers. But it can't tell our story alone. We were artists, builders, dreamers, not just warriors. He placed a hand on the console. We're uploading Earth's archive into its core. Alara Khan looked up from the system's input port. The AI said it was combat only. It could reject any non-military data. Let it try, Idris said. Let it see everything. Moments later, it began. Old Earth songs. Holovids of oceans of poetry, of a baby's first laugh. Blueprints. Flags. speeches, final messages recorded from bunkers deep beneath Seoul. Manhattan, Lagos, Sao Paulo, all of it, humanity's soul, flooding into a machine built to avenge it. The warship didn't stop moving, but for one brief second, all its lights flickered, as if it had just remembered what it was fighting for. Brand Council broadcast intercept, encrypted feed. Subspecies 9, a human, has achieved widespread reactivation of suppressed colonies. Multiple uprisings reported in sectors once considered cleansed. Human war vessel continues to ignore. Communication attempts. All peace protocols refused. A pause. Then the Vran overseer leaned forward and hissed, "Begin." Total erasure. Again. On a derelict moon once used as a Vran archive vault, a group of human scavengers stumbled upon something buried. Not data. Not weapons. A recording. A voice. Cracked, low, intimate. If you are hearing this, it means we failed. Earth is gone. The stars are not ours anymore. But if you're alive, if you're human, then remember this. We did not fall because we were weak. We fell because we hoped. And hope makes enemies. It ended with coordinates. The scavengers uploaded it to every old Earth relay still floating in the dark. Within 3 days, 216 hidden cells responded, some in code, some in blood. The words changed with every dialect, but they all meant the same thing. Humanity is awake. On the bridge of the Vran cruiser Sirix Tal, Admiral Virash bared his teeth as the human ship came into view once more. "What are we dealing with?" he growled. His aide replied, "It bypassed the gravity while using brute thrust. No mass shift, no field dampeners. It's flying like it doesn't care about surviving the trip. Any sign of a crew? No. Impossible. No AI runs without instruction." The aide hesitated. "Then, maybe it's not an AI. Maybe it's something else." Before Virash could respond, the feed from Sirix Tau cut out. They would find pieces of it orbiting a shattered moon 3 days later. No survivors. One word scorched into the hull, written in a dialect none of the Vran could translate. Remember. Inside the forge chamber, Elara Khan wept as she finished uploading the last footage from Earth, a video of children playing in a ruined park in what was once Moscow. The warship pulsed. For the first time, it spoke again. "We carry the heart of Earth. We burn not for vengeance. We burn so no child ever weeps in silence again." Idris stood with his crew beneath its hull, bathed in the red glow of history reborn. And in that moment, he knew. The Vran didn't fear human weapons. They feared human memory, because memory survives fire. Memory survives time. And now, the memory had teeth. The Vran struck back, not with honor, not with warning, with fire, chemicals, and obliteration. Entire human colonies, long hidden in asteroid belts and moons carved from silence, were reduced to data and ash. Children were vaporized mid-song. Spires melted into slag. Binary screams echoed through the dark as the Vran activated cleansing protocols they swore had been locked away after Earth's fall. They were wrong. The protocol wasn't forgotten. It was waiting. On the scorched ruins of Outpost Varela, Captain Idris Harlan stepped through the soot and silence. The ground was still hot. Bodies hadn't even finished cooling. They'd sent a distress signal 2 hours before the orbital strike. Shatterpoint had received it. They'd responded. But not in time. He dropped to one knee beside a half-buried. Comes a relay. A child's drawing was fused to its side. Crude lines of stars, a house, a smiling sun, all in bright red chalk. Red, just like the sky above them now. Elara stood behind him, her voice dry and hollow. Ran Class 7 strike. Planetary-grade munitions. Total yield, 6 million. 6 million people, Idris whispered. She didn't answer. They both knew what this meant. The warship they'd awakened wasn't enough. It had inspired. It had avenged, but it couldn't protect. Not everywhere. Not fast enough. The Vran had adapted, and humanity was bleeding again. Vran Council Command, High Orbit, Planet Shurak. The Overseer paced before the tactical array. This ends now. A voice responded from the shadows. Not Vran, not Synth, one of the emissaries. The secret hands of the Empire. Then strike at the source, it said. Find the human nexus. Cut off their myth. The ship? No, the voice hissed. The symbol, the one they call Harlan. Kill the face, and the body forgets to fight. The Overseer nodded slowly. Orders were dispatched. Assassins moved through the black. Shatterpoint, below surface level. Gamma, the forge buzzed with urgency. Idris stood beside Elara and 3 others, each from a different colony that had responded to the call. They didn't come for weapons. They came to join something bigger than rebellion. Among them was Rourke, an old war engineer with augments, stitched from 6 alien species. He'd once detonated a neutron mine with his bare hands to save a convoy. And Milavos, a signal hacker who could hijack a Vran dreadnought's neural net with a piece of copper wire and fury in her blood. They stood in silence as the warship pulsed again. It had changed, slightly, its form adapting, growing, incorporating the stories and souls being uploaded into its archive. It was becoming. Elara, Idris said, voice low. We need more than a weapon. We need a message. She nodded. I've been working on something. She tapped the interface. A hologram bloomed in the air, a fleet, but not a human one. Not exactly. From the archives, she said. Pre-fall blueprints. Civilian vessels, refitted merchant carriers. We can retrofit dozens of lost ships. Ghosts from the scrapyards. Combine old Earth tech with the ship's designs. Idris stared at them. Will they hold? No, not for long, she replied. But they'll scream when they fall. He smiled. That's all I ask. But before they could act, they came. The assassins. Cloaked in nothingness. Armed with energy blades carved from gravity fields. They cut through Shatterpoint's upper decks like shadows through silk. The first alert didn't sound until 2 engineers were dead. The second alert never came. It was Elara who saw them first. 2 shapes, moving like liquid death, breaking through the command corridor. Elara, down! She dove. A blade carved inches from her spine. Idris fired, a pulse round from an old magnetic rifle, but it phased right through. Holograms, projections. The real assassins struck from behind. Rourke turned just in time to grab one by the throat, his augments locking on. No one sneaks up on me, you slimy bastard. He crushed the assassin's neck. Bone and circuitry split like wet wood. But the second one stabbed him clean through. Rourke didn't scream. He just laughed, then fell. Elara fired her torchblade into the air duct. The second attacker surged forward, too fast. Idris stepped in and drove the rusted dog tag of his sister into the thing's eye. It spasmed. Sparks, smoke, collapse, silence. Later, Elara knelt beside Rourke's still form. She placed a scrap of his armor beside him, a piece of his augments etched with words in 3 languages. We die loud. Idris stood over them, face pale but set. That wasn't a strike, he said. No. Elara replied. It was a warning. He looked toward the warship, then to the sky. Then it's time we reply in kind. And so, from the bones of Shatterpoint, from the wreckage of old freighters, forgotten mining rigs, and repurposed Vran cargo shells, they built a fleet. Each ship etched with names. Not just of cities, of people. Rourke, Lyra's brother. Naira, Harlan, millions more. The dead would ride into battle, and the living would remember why. In deep space, a Vran fleet prepared to strike again, until something massive dropped out of warp. Not the warship. Not yet. It was one of the new ones. Patchwork. Glitching. Wrong. But it screamed with the voice of Earth. And as it exploded into the enemy formation with impossible fire and purpose, the last message it broadcast was heard by every species in the quadrant. You took everything. We're here to return the favor. They had always feared what humanity might become if left unchecked. They should have feared what we'd become when we had nothing left to lose. It began with silence. No grand battle. No hero stand. Just a quiet signal, drifting through the void. Not Vran, not human, not machine. Ancient, encoded in a dead dialect from Earth's early orbital stations. A ghost signal. Alara decoded it first. What is it? Idris asked, watching the fragmented waveform spiral like a heartbeat. Across the display. Her voice was distant. It's a location. Whose? She looked at him. Ours. The coordinates led to the edge of the harrowed expanse, a region the Vran marked as forbidden even to their own. A stretch of space where gravity. Laws broke, light bent in spirals, and machines screamed themselves to death. The warship, the wounded screams, didn't hesitate. It altered course without request. Why is it going there? Idris asked. Alara was pale. Because something's still alive in the expanse. Something human. They entered the expanse cautiously. Even the warship seemed to shiver. Alara watched the sensors glitch, restart, burn out. Idris stared through the reinforced glass, seeing stars fold like origami. Then, contact. A station. No, a graveyard of stations, woven together in impossible geometry. Spinning, rotating, humming with impossible power. It had no name, no ID code. But carved into its outer hull, in ancient Terran steel, was a single word: Exodus. Idris couldn't speak. His lungs felt full of history. They docked. The lights inside the station flared, not harshly, but like an old friend waking up. The doors opened. They stepped inside. And the voice came, soft, human, female, warm. Welcome back, children of Earth. We feared we were forgotten. It was not an AI. It was not a recording. It was her, Dr. Kira Thane, founder of the Earth Exodus Protocol. Last seen at the Battle of Titan's Wake. Presumed dead for 72 years. Her body was gone. Her consciousness had survived, integrated with the station. The last remnant of Earth's mind. She spoke through the walls, through lights, through memory. When the Vran turned Earth to ash, we knew some of us might endure. I was tasked with the Exodus seed, a backup of our science, our culture, our will. Images flickered through the chamber. Old Earth laboratories, scientists injecting memory crystals into machines. Babies born in cryopods, voices recording messages to no one. We survived, but we couldn't fight. We waited. Idris stepped forward. You sent the signal. I heard the warship wake, she said. Felt it. It carries our pain, but it cannot win alone. Alara's voice cracked. What? Are you offering? The lights dimmed. And then the floor opened, revealing the archive. Not just data. Not just memories. A weapon. A synthesis of humanity's forbidden sciences. Fold space drives without stabilizers. Quantum warheads that sang before they detonated. Biomatter code laced with extinct Earth viruses designed to target Vran DNA. It was hope, rewritten as extinction. Alara stepped back. If we use this? Idris finished the sentence. We become monsters. Kira's voice softened. I leave that choice to you. I have shown you what remains. You must decide what will rise from it. Back aboard the warship, Idris stood before the red glowing core. He placed the Exodus archive chip into its terminal. The ship responded. A low, resonant hum, deeper than anything they'd heard before. A sound like Earth mourning. Across the galaxy, Vrancom's stations flared with encrypted human signals. One by one, the hidden cells responded. Not with small acts of rebellion this time, with unity. The spark had grown into a fire. On the moon of Varelos, a resistance force, once 20 strong, now numbered 10,000. On orbit city Rikuin, Vran. Defectors handed over weapons stockpiles and switched sides, not because they believed in humans, but because they'd seen the warship. They'd seen what memory could become. In dark corners of the Empire, species once enslaved began to rise. And as the fleet Idris and Alara had dreamed of began to form from ruin, one question remained. Would they fight like soldiers or burn like gods? In the quiet of the forge chamber, Idris sat alone, listening to an old Earth broadcast on loop. A recording of a boy barely 10 years old. Mom said if we ever got out, I could see the real stars, not the ones behind the shield. She said Earth had stars that danced. It ended in static. He sat with it for a long time, then stood and issued the command. Upload the archive to the fleet, all of it. Alara's eyes widened. We're going forward with the plan? He nodded. No more waiting, no more hiding. But if we use this tech, we don't have to use it all, Idris said. But we must have the choice. He looked toward the stars. If they won't let us live, we'll teach them why they should have. The fleet pulsed to life. Not perfect, not clean, but human in all its broken, burning brilliance. And at its core, the memory of a world lost, now rebuilt not in land, but in will. The Vran wouldn't just face a war. They would face every soul they thought they erased. The stars had gone quiet, not from peace, but from fear. The Vran Empire reeled. Their outer sectors burned. Their dominion, once so total, so absolute, now fractured by whispers of rebellion, by flickers of ships that should not exist. Every battle they fought was not just against human weapons, but human memory. And memory, they were learning, could not be destroyed, only buried. And buried things rise. In the depths of Shatterpoint, Captain Idris Holland stood in the war chamber, surrounded by projections of what remained of the galaxy. 36 species had sent signals, some seeking alliance, others seeking forgiveness, a few simply seeking hope. Behind Idris, the wounded screams hovered like a vengeful God. Since the Exodus archive had been integrated, it had changed. Not in design, in presence. It no longer moved like a machine. It moved like a judge. Alara Khan activated the final relay codes. All units have received their jump sequences. The fleet will converge at the Vran core line in 36 hours. Idris nodded slowly. And the Vran? They've pulled back from the outer sectors. No counterstrike. No response. They're not retreating, Idris said. She looked at him. No, they're building something. Far across the stars, behind a field of warped space and cloaked satellites, the Vran prepared their final defense, Project Severance. A failsafe, one last act of dominance. At its core was a weapon forbidden even by their own laws, a gravitic event detonator designed to collapse thought, not ships, not matter. Consciousness. It didn't destroy the body. It severed the soul. Deploy it against the human fleet, the High Overseer commanded. One of the emissaries hesitated. It will affect our own. Let it, the Overseer snarled. If we cannot have the stars, neither shall they. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Exodus warship, Idris stood before the crew, human and non-human alike. Survivors from across the rim, rebels, engineers, children who'd grown old in hiding. This isn't about revenge, he said. It's about truth. He paused, scanning their faces. They tried to erase us, to burn our names from the sky, and we let them for a time. We hid, we mourned, we waited. He drew a breath. But now, we choose what story ends this war. Alara stood beside him. The Exodus archive contains tech that can wipe the Vran from existence. In one blow, clean, final, murmurs, uneasy silence. Then she added, but if we use it, we become the same as them. Rourke's name flashed briefly on the warship's inner walls. So did Nera's, and the names of every lost soul this fleet carried. Their blood demanded a price, but the living had to set the cost. In his private chamber, Idris stared at a faded photo, Earth's oceans. A beach, a child standing ankle-deep in water. He didn't know who the child was. The photo had been anonymous, salvaged from a crashed escape vault, but it felt like truth, like home. He reached for the comms. Send a message to all resistance cells, he said. 3 words. The comms officer blinked. What 3? Idris stared out the viewport, where the fleet gathered like a storm on the edge of sunrise. We choose mercy. Alara found him in the hangar, moments before departure. They'll call us weak, she said quietly. I know. They'll come again. He turned. We'll be ready next time. Not with fire, with memory. She smiled bitterly. And if they don't accept mercy? Idris stepped onto the boarding ramp of the warship. Then we show them what mercy costs when refused. And so they moved. Thousands of ships, welded from ruins, coated with the screams of Earth, lit by the defiance of generations, entered Vran space together. Not silently, singing, not marching, remembering. At the edge of the Vran core, the fleets faced each other. On one side, sleek perfection, ancient technology, cold efficiency. On the other, humanity's ghosts, their children, their Fryn. The Vran launched Project Severance, a field of psychic distortion spread across space, reaching into the minds of every organic being within the sector. Ships buckled, pilots screamed, some collapsed. But not the warship, not Idris, not Alara, because they were no longer fighting as individuals. The Exodus archive surged. Across every human vessel, memories flooded the interfaces, binding them, strengthening them. The Vran weapon severed thought. But humanity's thoughts were never separate. They were stories, passed down, shared, retold. You cannot sever a memory carried by many. Alara fell to her knees, not in pain, in revelation. We're still here, she whispered, because we remember together. Idris opened a fleet-wide channel. All units, hold fire. Stunned silence. He continued, transmit the archive. All of it. Into the Vran network. Show them Earth. Show them what they destroyed. Are you sure? Alara asked. No, he said. But if they still have the capacity to choose, maybe this time, they'll choose differently. And so the archive flowed across enemy systems, unshielded, unfiltered. Every scream, every lullaby, every speech, every death, every final whisper of a mother holding her child beneath a burning sky. The Vran watched the truth, and for the first time, hesitated. In the quiet, the warship's core pulsed once, then twice. Then it spoke. They understand. The moment is near. Decide. Idris looked to the fleet. The countdown had begun. One final chance to ignite vengeance, or redefine what it meant to be human. They gave us silence. We gave them a song that could never be unheard. The Vran fleet was vast, silver giants bristling with weaponry, each forged over centuries of conquest. They stood still now, frozen in perfect formation at the edge of their empire's core. Across from them, humanity's fleet, a ragged phalanx of battered freighters, retrofitted war hulks, reawakened mining ships and ghost vessels, all tethered by one truth. Earth had died, but its will had not. The wound that screams drifted forward. It did not broadcast targeting data. It did not raise shields. Instead, it opened its heart and poured all of Earth into the stars. The archive transmission hit the Vran like a blade of light. Billions of memories surged into their network, not as code, but as emotion, as truth, as the final screams of Earth's fall, as the quiet songs sung in hiding, as the messages never answered. I love you. We tried. Don't forget us. In their ships, Vran officers collapsed to their knees. Some tore off their helmets. Others wept without knowing what the act meant. One by one, their weapons dimmed. They had come expecting monsters. They found themselves staring at a mirror of their own history, only darker, because they had written it in blood. Not theirs. On the bridge of the warship, Idris Harlan stood in silence. He had made no speech. He had given no orders. There was nothing left to say, only to feel. And the galaxy felt humanity. But not all chose peace. High Overseer Threx, encased in ceremonial, armor stitched from 100 worlds, hissed through his command relay. Burn the humans. Burn the archive. Burn their memories. A final signal flashed. Project Severance. Stage 2. A backup detonator buried in the core of Ram Prime. One that would unleash a psychic collapse across all conscious life. Within 1,000 light years, even the emissaries recoiled. It will destroy everything, they said. Threx sneered. Then let memory die with them. In the heart of the warship, Alara Khan saw the spike in data. Her fingers trembled over. The interface. They're detonating, she whispered. Not just weapons, reality. Idris turned. What's the yield? She looked at him. It'll kill us. Them. Everyone who remembers Earth. It'll erase memory. History itself. A beat. Will. Be forgotten. Idris stepped forward. Not if we choose how we're remembered. He reached into the console, removed the lock on the wound that screams core. A blinding pulse surged. The ship groaned. Not mechanically, spiritually. Then it spoke. Final protocol unlocked. A hatch opened in its underbelly. A small craft emerged, an old Earth escape pod, retooled, flickering with unstable energy. Alara's eyes widened. That's a STRDR, IVE ... with no stabilizer. It'll detonate in fold space, Idris said. Rip the Vran command. Relay out of reality. Stop the chain. And the one piloting it? He looked at her. Won't come back. In the hangar, Idris suited up. Alara stood across from him, fists clenched, trembling. You can't do this alone. I have to, he said gently. It has to mean something. Not rage, not revenge, choice. She stepped forward. Then take this. She pressed to something. Into his hand. The dog tag. Naira Harlan. Tell her we made it. He smiled. Not because he was ready, but because he wasn't afraid anymore. Live loud, Alara. She kissed his forehead. Dai remembered. The escape pod launched. Into fold space, a comet of broken dreams aimed directly at the Vran core relay. Inside, Idris sat in silence. No final words. Just the sound of an old Earth lullaby playing through static. And the photo of a child standing by the sea, taped to the control panel. One day, the stars will dance again. The Vran fleet activated. Severance. The psychic wave began. Ships buckled. Minds fractured. Until a pulse. Blinding. Pure. The escape pod reached the core and collapsed everything around it in a tear of white fire and screaming starlight. The command relay unmade. Severance short-circuited. Not stopped. Sacrificed. Across the battlefield, silence reigned. Then, the wound that screams spoke for the final time. Idris Harlan remembered. And then, nothing. Ran ships powered down. They did not fire. They did not retreat. They simply bowed. And in that stillness, with humanity's firstborn, sun buried in folded starlight, the galaxy finally understood. We were not powerful because we fought. We were powerful because we chose not to, even when we could. On Shatterpoint, Alara looked to the stars, tears streaming down her cheeks. Rourke, Lyra, Idris, Earth, all gone. And yet, not gone at all. A new fleet emerged behind her. Not of warships, but ships of memory, libraries, hospitals, carriers of truth. They would not spread empire. They would spread story, because story outlives death, and Earth was now a story every species carried. The last scream of Earth echoed not through space, but through time, and when it faded, silence bowed to memory. 6 months after the detonation, the war was over. Not with signatures, not with treaties, but with understanding. The Vran Empire, once the most feared dominion in the spiral, fractured from within. The death of their severance relay had been more than a tactical loss. It was the end of certainty. They had believed in obedience, in perfection, in silence. And humanity had shown them the opposite. Chaos, flaws, noise, hope. It had survived extinction, and taught them what it meant to live. Atop the rebuilt spires of Shatterpoint, Alara Khan stood before a gathering not of soldiers, but of survivors. Thousands, some human, many not. Behind her, the wounded screams remained. Motionless, cold, silent, a tomb now. And a monument. The warship no longer responded to commands. After the final message, Idris Harlan remembered. It had gone still. It had done its part. Now it rested. Alara stepped forward, wind whipping through her hair. There are no victors, she began, because victory implies an end. And we are only just beginning. She looked out over the crowd, some still wearing the uniforms of fallen worlds, others draped in rags stitched with the flags of the dead. You came here because Earth spoke to you, because our pain reached through the silence and said, "You are not alone." She held up a small object, a scorched piece of an escape pod's hull. Idris's. This is what remains of the man who chose to die for strangers. She paused. Not out of duty, but love. Alara set the fragment into a glass vault lined with names. Naira Harlan, Rourke, Kira Thane, Lyra's brother. Billions more. From this moment forward, she said, we are no longer fleets or species or exiles. She raised her voice. We are memory incarnate, and we remember. The galaxy changed. The war scarred more than bodies. It rewrote what power meant. No empire dared rise without permission from the free worlds again. The Vran scattered, many vanishing into exile, others joining reconstruction efforts. Some even chose to serve aboard the new fleet of remembrance, not to fight. 2. Witness and Earth, still gone, still ash, but not lost. Alara led the mission to recover its orbit, to gather the fragments of the blue planet's broken skin and seed them across space. Planets once lifeless now bore Terran soil. Gardens grew where nothing had dared bloom before. In time, a new world formed, not Earth reborn, but Earth remembered. It was called Nira, not in defiance of what was lost, but in honor of the child who had believed it could be saved. Years passed. Children grew up hearing stories of Idris Harlan, the man who flew into silence so that memory might roar. They learned his sister's name. They heard Alara's voice echo through the schools of Naira, and always, behind every lesson, behind Every star map and language class and history exam was the warship. Silent now, unmoving, a present. Because the ship was no longer a weapon. It was a reminder that humanity had once faced the void and answered it. On the 10-year anniversary of the final battle, a young boy stood before the glass vault where Idris's remains lay. He had been born in freedom, but he knew what it had cost. He looked up at the warship and asked his mother, "Is it asleep?" She smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "No," she whispered. "It's listening." Alara Khan never stopped traveling. She became the voice of the Remembrance Fleet, not as a commander, but as a teacher. She visited worlds once scarred by war and planted archives there, not data vaults, but living libraries. Songs, art, memories. She never rebuilt Earth. She spread it. Because Earth, she knew, was never meant to be just a place. It was a promise. And in time, even the Vram built a monument. Not in their core system, but far beyond it, in a quiet stretch of space once used for exile. It was simple. A circle of metal, hovering alone. Engraved in 3 languages, we forgot who they were. They remembered who we could be. Human. The warship's final log, decrypted decades later, contained one line that hadn't been spoken aloud during the war. Idris's voice, rough, quiet, tired, but clear. Let them say we were flawed. Let them say we were reckless. But let them never say we were silent. And they never did. Not again. Not anywhere. Because in the end, we were not the strongest. Not the oldest. Not the most advanced. But we were the first to say, "You will remember us." And the galaxy did. Forever. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human. End.